In today's episode, I'm joined by Trent and Jeni from the Disney DNA podcast.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
You are listening to the Main Street Magic Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy Stein and John Marone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I am your host, Jeremy Stein, and I am not joined by my friend and co-host, John Marone, today. However, I am joined by two very special guests, and that is Trent and Jeni from the Disney DNA podcast. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. We are happy to be here.
Today's episode will be part one in a two-part series where we talk about planning and preparing for your Walt Disney World vacation. But first, I wanted to start and get to know a little bit more about you guys. So you're in Louisiana. Have you grown up there? Is that where you've always been your whole life?
I'll go first because her story's a little bit different than mine. Yeah, I have actually been born and raised here. I am from a little small town called Prairieville, which is about 15 minutes outside of Baton Rouge, the capital here. And I've been here all my life, and just love the South, and we call it living that Gulf life. We just having a fun time with it. Just a big Tiger fan down here and a Saints fan, and that's about it. Just love being from Louisiana. And Jeni?
Well, I'm a little different because my dad was in the Army, and so he's from Louisiana, and my mom is from Washington State, and they met in Germany.
Oh, wow.
I was born in Utah, in Tooele, Utah, and we moved around some, and then my dad got stationed back in Louisiana, and he kind of worked it out to be able to serve near where he grew up. So I primarily grew up in Louisiana, about 2 hours from where we are right now. So it's kind of the central Concordia, Catahoula Parish part of the state.
Right.
So I am from here, but I'm not from here.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been all over. So you guys have two daughters. How old are they?
9, and sis is 9, Sophia, and Brooklyn, who you'll hear us call B, she is turning 11 on November 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so how long has the podcast been around for you guys? How long have you been doing this?
It has been going on almost 2 years because we are reaching close to our big anniversary of the 100th episode, and we are excited because it's a huge milestone for us, and we started the idea in kind of a late 2015 and did some research, and we started buying all of our gear, and then kind of started on January 1st of 2016, and just kind of this whole idea of it's just been evolving,
Yeah. So what made you think of starting a Disney podcast? I mean, you obviously have a love for Disney, and we'll get into a little bit of that, but what made you decide you wanted to take this to a level of doing a podcast and social media and putting yourselves out there just to give other people information, or you just love talking Disney so much you figured maybe somebody will listen to you?
Well, kind of both, but it's kind of more or less. For us, it was all about just after going to the parks, and you get that excitement, and you feel that joy of just having a full week there, and how about coming back and let's talk about it, But prior to us even starting this thing, we listened to a whole bunch of other podcasts because we didn't bring our daughters when they were babies. We waited till they were a little older, especially hitting that the height requirements and stuff. So they were a little bit later on. And we kept talking about it, and we watched all the movies, and we own them all too. I mean, we have a whole closet full of them, and just sharing that excitement with other people is what we liked. So we got back and said, hey, let's start this podcast thing, and just kind of fell in love with it. And it's just one of those things that we enjoy doing once a week. Just getting on here, talking about something that we thoroughly enjoy and have a passion for, because we absolutely love Disney, and we go once a year, but I wish we could go twice a year. But for right now, it's in our cards. I'm just going once, and it's fun. And we typically go during the holidays because we just absolutely love the parks because they're so beautiful, and the decorations, and I mean, just awesome, right, Jeni?
Correct. And it was funny when Trent brought up, "Hey, I want to start a podcast." It was like, who on earth are going to listen to us? But then on the other hand, it was like, well, wait a second. We listen to all these other random people talk
Right.
about, other random stuff. Why
Right.
not listen to us?
Yeah.
Because we have that southern accent, so it was like, who wants to listen to these southern people? So, but I mean, it's the podcast is growing every month. I mean, we're getting more and more listeners, and it's a blast. And
Right.
for us, we have met so many wonderful people in the community, and we just absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the southern aspect is a good draw for you guys. It makes you very easy to listen to, and the fact that it is a family show. When we're going on trips to and from Disney in the car, I'm putting on podcasts, and it's nice to have something that my kids in the back seat, they're 7 and 9, can listen to as well. And you guys offer a lot of things that are very informative and takeaways. And that's what I'm excited to end up getting into today. But before we get into some of the preparing and planning, I'm going to steal from your show and ask you guys, when you knew that you had the Disney DNA, what was that moment for each of you when you knew that Disney was just kind of in your blood?
I'll go first, Jenny, because
Yeah, you go ahead.
my story gets really involved and really kind of personal. Because for me, it started off. I was young. I mean, I went to Disney when I was 8 years old, but prior to that, I was around seven or so. I had these neighbors next door to me, and we played all the time. And they would go and they would come back and tell me all these fun stories of like, oh, we got to to experience Space Mountain and Jungle Cruise, and it was like, wow, what's all these things? And they met, Snow White and Mickey Mouse. And I'm like, I want to do all this stuff. So
Yeah.
at one point, my family said, "Hey, let's go take us to Disney World and see what all this is about." And see, back then, this is where I kind of show my age here. I mean, I am 42, so back then there was only two parks. It was Magic Kingdom and Epcot,
Yeah.
and by that time, Epcot was just a few years old. And I remember just walking down Main Street, and that is when I knew that I had that Disney DNA, because my love for that park, it it grew, and I have a passion for it today. And sometimes I get a little emotional because it's just I have such a strong desire to be there, and I wish I could move there. I mean, if I could pack us all up here and move there, I would. I mean, I would love to relocate. But just I can I can remember that first time, just walking down and just seeing the castle and experiencing those attractions with my parents. And speaking of my parents, and for those who actually don't know, is on this year's trip, we are bringing them back with us, and this is our first time back in 30 years, because they took me twice in my life. I was 8 and I was 10, and they haven't been back since that trip. So this is going to be an extra special moment for me that I cannot wait to experience, because seeing their faces and then having our daughters and just experiencing those attractions and those all those shows and those things that we like, is we like to build our memories, and because those things last a lifetime.
Yeah.
and
That's
and
awesome.
and that's how it is for me. I mean, just having those great neighbors that showed me those movies and talked about their trips, and actually seeing some of their films, because they actually, I mean, this shows age again, they did reel to reel those old school camcorders from way back when, and watching their trips, it was just like, oh my gosh, I want to go experience this. So I have to thank my parents. I mean, they kind of got that started, but once I got there, I knew this is a place for me. So
Yeah.
Jenny, what's your story?
My story is not that involved.
Nope.
Um, and first, I would like to say I'm only 33. Trent keeps talking like he's an old man because he's
I'm not
42.
old.
But
Well, I'm
No.
about right in between both of you, so
yeah, every now and then he sounds like he's talking like he's old, and I'm
No,
like,
no,
I'm
no.
not. I'm not old. I'm only 33. But so, I was raised pretty much the opposite of Trent, and we did not really go on vacation. Disney. I was not a kid who watched a lot of TV. I owned horses no matter where we lived. We had horses and animals, so I pretty much grew up outside. It wasn't until Trent and I went on our honeymoon is when I went for the first time in '05. But
Oh,
it
okay.
wasn't really until we decided to take the girls that I got into Disney because I got into the planning side
Hmm.
of Disney. I thoroughly enjoy doing the research and making the ADRs and the fast passes and the itineraries and where are we going to stay and pros and cons. That's really when I started to get into Disney, uh more than just sitting down and watching a movie,
Yeah.
was the planning.
Yeah. Well, and I think what I find out, for everybody has two kind of Disney first times, and that's when they were a kid, and then when they get to take their own kids. And that was the same for me. I mean, we went. I grew up in Maryland, and I think we went 2 or 3 times during my entire childhood. But it wasn't until I moved to Florida and then was able to take my own children, and you see it through their eyes again, and it just kind of brings it all back. So that's really cool to hear those stories, especially, Trent, you growing up as a kid and going to that and having those neighbors. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so you guys have a trip coming up. As you
Yes.
mentioned, your parents will be going with you.
Hmm.
You have an official countdown of days?
23.
23 days.
Okay.
I don't
and-
know when this is out, but I mean, we're going Thanksgiving a week.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah. So where are you guys staying?
We're going to stay at the Coronado Springs. Now, I know it's under construction, but when we booked the trip, the that whole tower wasn't kind of talked about then.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
just was like oh no, what's going on? But we've heard reports and seen some videos that it's under construction, but you really can't tell because Disney has that magic where they
Yeah.
build those walls and it just blends in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're covered in like camouflage and leaves,
yes.
and you almost don't notice because no, we've been to Coronado twice. You guys will absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite resorts, and they had started the construction when we were there back in May, and yeah, you couldn't notice it. They do such a great job. You're not, you're in the parks during the day when they're doing the work. You're not
Right.
hearing things at night. You're not seeing construction workers walking back and forth and big
Right.
machinery. So yeah, I think you guys will love it there. So you're going for a full week, the full week of
Yes.
Thanksgiving?
Full week. Yeah.
Saturday to Saturday.
Now, do you normally do Thanksgiving in Disney, or you just normally do some week during the holiday period?
No, we normally do Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
We've got to work with the kids' school schedules,
Yeah.
and we don't. I mean, you have the same hot weather as we do here. We are not going to pay all that money to go to Florida and sweat in the
Yeah.
summertime.
Yeah.
I can sweat
Yeah.
in Louisiana for free.
And it's
Yeah.
been a brutal summer here, as I'm sure it has been
Yes.
there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely a smart move. So now, Jenny, you said you really got interested in the planning side of these trips. So I take it, are you doing all the planning, or do you ever work
Yes.
with a travel agent?
I do 100% of the planning.
Yes.
Okay.
I will ask. Okay, this is going to sound horrible, and I don't mean it to sound horrible, but I
Uh-oh.
will ask opinions just so, especially this trip, just so everyone feels involved.
Yeah.
But that doesn't. I normally end up planning what works for our family.
Yeah, she's really good at it. So it's good for her to actually do it because, like I said, she has been doing it for a while now and has it really under
Well,
wraps, really good.
It helps with my upbringing with my mom served in the military too. So we have the military background from both parents who were very organized and kind of this is the steps that you do it in and that's how you do it. So when it came to planning, I started listening to a couple planning podcasts and I took all of the information they were giving me and I kind of picked and chose what would work for us, what steps would work for us. So that's kind of how I have like a method. I don't know what you want to call
Yeah.
it. I have
It's
certain
cool,
steps
whatever
I
it is.
do, and I have a certain time frame that I do them in, and it works for our family. I've shared it with a few other people, and it's worked for their family as well. But I got different ideas from different podcasts and kind of put them together, and a couple of different blogs that I used to follow and stuff, and put it together.
Yeah.
Yep.
So since you know the same time you're going every year, does your trip, is that when your planning and your preparing starts basically as you're ending your one yearly trip? Are you already
No.
booking for a year from now, or what does
So-
that look like?
you could book ahead of time 400 and some odd days.
Mm-hmm.
So in August of this year, I booked Thanksgiving next year.
Already.
So August of last year, before we had even went and we stayed at Art of Animation last year, I had already booked Coronado.
I love it. That's
So
great.
I am the 400 and some odd days out. I've got my deposit down. There has been one year my friend was going to meet us down there and we weren't sure she was going to be able to go. So I actually had two separate trips booked, two different places, two sets of ADRs, two sets of fast passes, and she ended up not being able to come. But that was okay because I had the two separate trips planned. The one included her and the one with just us.
Yeah. So
So
we know in normal planning, your first step is booking your stay at the resort, which you've obviously been way ahead of, which is great. We have the 180 days out for ADRs and the 60 days for fast passes. So when you're looking, 180 days out, you have to grab some of those dining reservations, obviously, or you may not get them. How do you plan that far ahead, or are there certain go-tos that
it's
you go? I know
super
you guys aren't
easy.
huge foodies,
No.
so
No.
I don't think you do a ton of ADRs. But what are you looking at? Or are there certain
W-
must-have ADRs that you get every time?
We do one ADR a day.
Okay.
And the way we do it is I have a piece of paper and there's a couple of crowd calendars that I like to look at, and I combined all of the crowd calendars onto the one piece of paper with, the busiest park, the lightest, and then by then our first full day is at Magic Kingdom and our last full day is at Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
So I know those 2 days we have those restaurants as options. And then the rest of the days I kind of fill in. I like to go to Hollywood/Epcot on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So that's just what I like to do. So I plan that for Thanksgiving. But the other days I just kind of fill in on, what days are the least amount of people going to be in that particular park.
Yeah.
This year we have park hoppers. I'm not sure how much we're going to use them with transparents, but we're going to try and use them quite a bit. So once I have where I'm going to be when established, that's when I start going, okay, we really like to have a be our guest on the last day. And since it is the day after Thanksgiving, it's kind of a hard reservation to get.
Yeah.
So if I get lunch, that's great. If I get supper, that's even better. But I'll take either of those and I go from there. We try new places, especially in Epcot. This trip, we're not trying anywhere new. We actually sat down with my in-laws and we watched YouTube videos and we went to places like allears.net and we looked at menus and we let them pick the restaurants this year.
Yep.
But I picked the days, and normally I try to do supper for an ADR, but this year I figured it would be better to do a late lunch because then my in-laws can come to the park, do the late lunch, and if they want to go back to the resort, they don't have to worry about rushing back to meet us somewhere on time. They can just enjoy their afternoon.
Yeah. That's perfect. And now I've listened to several of your episodes. I've gone back the past few weeks, learned more about you guys, and your information is great. You guys are like me and my family as far as the Disney dining plan goes. Do you want to share a little bit about your thoughts on the Disney dining plan? Because I think a lot of people feel like it's this incredible value, and it can be if you're the type of family that needs it. I know we're not the type, your family is not the type as well. Why don't you just share a little bit about your thoughts on the dining plan so that people can kind of hear what works and what might not work for their family regarding dining plan?
So I'm going to take this one because it has to do with our budget planning as well.
Yeah.
When we go to Disney, we spend about $80 to $120 a day on food.
Yep. That's
But
right.
here's what we do. We bring our own breakfast. And for your listeners that don't know, I cannot eat gluten. I cannot eat dairy. I cannot have a lot of spices. I can't eat acidic food. There's a few other things in there. So I'm really restricted. So we bring our own breakfast. Even when we fly, I've got certain breakfast foods I can have, and I'll bring them like honey buns or Pop Tarts or whatever.
Nice, huh?
So we're not worrying about spending money on that. We do a quick service for the four of us is usually about $40 to $45, and then a sit down restaurant. Now, if you're sitting down at Be Our Guest or a buffet or somewhere, it's obviously going to be more. But your typical 50s prime time will spend $60 to $80 with the tip.
Yeah.
Right.
So for us, we're not spending a lot, and we bring snacks, so we're not spending a lot of money in the park on snacks either. We're not big snackers. So for us to go for 7 days, I budget in $800, and I've never gone over that.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. Yeah,
That
it's
is-
amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, on top of having everything, planned out, I literally can plan our budget to the penny. I've never gone over budget. Even with travel expenses, we've never gone over.
But the cool thing is, we get back from our trips, and we usually have a couple $100 left over, so we just roll that over
Yeah.
to the next trip, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you may have to start planning for our family because we're constantly over budget, it seems. But yeah, I mean, and that's the same way we feel. There's a fridge in every room. At least it's a micro fridge. I mean, we'll bring milk in those cereal bowls for the kids in the morning, or we'll do bagels. You can get to some of the resorts as you get up to the moderate and deluxe
Yeah.
levels that will have toasters in them. So it's something that we've done as well. And then there's two things I'm probably notorious for talking about on our show. One is theming and being immersed in the Disney, whether it's a park or a room. And the other thing I talk constantly about is that we split meals. My wife is 5'1" and 105 pounds soaking wet, so she doesn't eat a lot to begin with. So most of the time, her and I are splitting a meal. Our kids don't eat a ton, so they're splitting a meal, and then we're snacking throughout the day. So we still get that taste of Disney, but yeah, without just spending so much money.
Yeah, and if you're bringing snacks with protein, I know Trent gets tired of hearing me talk about this, but if you're bringing the right snacks, there's no need to really snack between meals, because if you have your protein like beef jerky or the peanut butter cups or peanut butter crackers, stuff like that, you'll eat your snack and you will be full until the next meal. And whereas if you're giving kids, here's a Snickers bar. Nothing wrong with Snickers. They're my favorite. I'm just saying, if you're saying, here's a Snickers bar, 20 minutes later, they're going to be hungry.
Yeah.
Let me clarify one thing, too. Now, we do bring our snacks, but we do get our Dole Whips and our pretzels and all that stuff, too.
The frozen bananas.
Frozen
that's
bananas,
the only
too,
thing I like.
but we do get those. I mean, so let me just clarify.
But we're not getting them every day in the morning, in the afternoon, and whatnot.
Just
and
a few times.
Even when we fly, I bring a plastic cubby that has breakfast foods in it. When we drive, we'll bring sodas, Dr. Pepper. I'm just saying. It just last year, it killed me to not, because I drink a Dr. Pepper a day. So when we went to the emergency room, totally different story. I brought back like 5 or 6 Dr. Peppers with me.
Yeah.
But even when we fly, we still bring the snacks and the breakfast.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's such good info because you can, when you're budgeting out, I don't think people understand always the cost of the food at Disney and the way those snacks add up. But since we're talking about snacks, I feel like there's the people that love this snack item and there's the people that hate it. I've never met anyone in between. So where do you guys stand on the turkey legs?
Disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm
on your team then.
Okay.
I can't eat them because the grease makes me sick.
Yeah.
But last year when we went, the smell of them was making me like nauseous.
Oh yeah, it is
I
overwhelming.
could not handle the smell of it.
I'm not a big fan.
No. Yeah, we're all on the same team there, so that part's great. So you guys are spending a full week down there. You said you have Park Hopper. Are you spending at least some time every day in the park, or do you take a full day off to enjoy the resort or do Disney Springs? What does your scheduling look like? Because that's a long trip, and when you have the potential for people to go down and just go from sun up to sundown at parks, and a lot of them don't realize that come day 3 on a full week you could be exhausted and about done. What do you guys do to make sure that halfway through the trip you're not, trying to sleep in till 11 a.m. because you just can't take anymore?
Well, for us, we have good intentions to come back, but we typically
All
all
day, every day.
yeah, all day, every day. But we do rope drop to almost park close. I mean, we get close to the end, but with our daughters, they get tired, and we have to bring them back. But
Yeah.
I think this year we're going to try something new, and I'm gonna say try, is go rope drop and then come back maybe a little bit after lunchtime and take that little break and then go back in the evenings and see what happens. And with having my parents with us, hopefully, fingers crossed here, right, Jenny, that we
Right.
can get it out ourselves and have my parents watch our daughters so we can have some fun because since we've been bringing our daughters, it's always been the four of us. It hasn't been just the two of us since our honeymoon. So it would be kind of nice to experience some of these things with just the two of us.
Right.
So
Sure.
we have intentions, but I don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Every family is different, and you really have to know what your kids and your self, what your limits are.
Yeah.
Our kids are morning kids.
Yeah.
They are up 6 o'clock every morning, even on Saturdays, since the day they were born. So mornings are better for them. Now at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock, we know we have to call it quits because they're done.
hmm
And I know they've got to get at least 8 hours of sleep to be able to get up. I know their cycle. I know their routine. I know we can rope drop and go and go and go and go and go until usually about 8:30. I'm like, okay, we need to wrap it up and start heading back, which Trent likes the nightlife, but
Oh,
they're
yeah. Oh, yeah.
not to the point where they can do that yet.
Yeah.
Another thing we do is we take breaks.
Oh, yeah.
I plan breaks, but we take them in the park. We'll find a tree to sit under. We'll find somewhere comfortable. I've fallen asleep in the parks a few times. I mean, the kids have as well. There's places where we go and we rest, and we'll rest 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, not just sit down for 5 minutes. We'll stay a good long chunk so that we get that rest.
One thing that I really enjoy is opening up a park, because of the cast members. They're so friendly. And I just like saying that, like, good morning. And they're really vocal on telling you good morning. And if you're by
They're
some
full
chance,
of coffee, and they're
Yeah.
really happy
Yeah.
at that. They haven't dealt with people all day.
Yeah.
so
Yeah. They
they're
haven't
really
been there for
friendly.
10 hours.
right. And on top of that is we get a lot done in the morning. I mean, we knock out a whole bunch of attractions, and our favorite thing to do is being that first family on Pirates because we
Yeah.
like to walk in, and it's just fun. I mean, just everybody is so friendly at that time of morning, and it's just fun.
Yeah. So it sounds like we often do rope drop as well. We'll stick around the park sometimes till 2 or 3, and we'll go back to the resort. And we often have the intention of going back to a park in the evening. We don't always make it back there once we've just kind of relaxed and we're at the hotel. So it sounds like though you guys for Magic Kingdom, you're in the minority that goes left at the hub when everybody else is going right. And it's amazing what you can knock out when you head left as opposed to right, and you're able to hit, maybe Jungle Cruise, Pirates. You can swing up, get Big Thunder or Splash, and maybe even Haunted Mansion. And you've already done all of those rides before you've even been in the park for maybe an hour. So that right there, I think, is perfect. And Jenny, what you're saying about knowing what your family is like and what they can handle is I think, such a great tip too, because if you just push and push and push, everybody's going to be miserable. If your kids
Exactly.
aren't early risers, then you need to just realize that and you need to plan around it. So I think that is such a valuable tip.
Right.
So
One thing, knowing what your family can handle. If you're not a very active family, when we're at Disney, we walk anywhere between 60 and 70 miles in a week.
yeah,
If you're not a very active family, you're not going to be able to handle that. So I tell people, 3-4 months before you go to Disney, you need to start going on family walks
start
and stuff.
training.
So everybody is ready to handle it. I mean, we all kind of laugh about that, but it's true.
And let's talk about, walking as well, because I know you guys have some tips here that people don't think about is, as silly as it can sound, your footwear. When you're putting in 60 to 70 miles in a week, don't buy a new pair of shoes the day before you go on your trip and you've never put them on. Make sure you have something that's going to be comfortable. I think
bring
that's
more
so
than one
important.
pair.
Yes.
Bring more than one pair, because here's the thing. If you're wearing your shoes for 60 or 70 miles, they might be fine that week, but you will hate them past it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
we always bring two pairs. Trent and Sophia bring Crocs and
the ugliest shoes in the world, but they're so
Converse.
comfortable.
Yeah, they bring Crocs and Converse.
Yep.
Brooklyn and I have Crocs, Converse, and Nikes. I think this year we're just bringing the Converse and Nikes.
Right.
And what we'll do is I'll say, okay, girls, if you wore your Crocs yesterday, today you need to wear your other ones.
Yeah.
Or if it's raining, we'll just wear the Crocs, but kind of switch it up some, because that's less feet fatigue.
Yes.
And it's easier on your shoes. Shoes are really only meant to be worn for X amount of miles. Like if you're a runner, you keep track of your miles because you know when it's time to get new shoes. It's the same with regular shoes.
Yeah.
So you want your shoes to be broken in, but you don't want them to be at the end of their life either.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Well, and one of the other things I love that you said as far as taking the breaks and planning around that, and whether that is, finding a spot in the shade, or maybe it's you decide that at a certain point in the day, you want to go check out, the Muppet Show, or you want to go into one of the shows that's well air conditioned, and take some of that time to just sit back and relax. Now that Ellen's Energy Adventure is gone, that kind of ruins Epcot naps for everybody. But I'm sure there's plenty of other, places there that we can still find them. So that's going to wrap it up for today. But make sure you join us for the next episode, where we'll talk more about planning and preparing for your trip. Make sure you go to www.DisneyDNApodcast.com to check out Trent and Jeni Show. And from there, you can find them on all of the social media platforms. That's all for now. I'll see you real soon.